Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on digital tax readiness, powering MSMEs and CPAs through EOPT. I am Katrina Sanchez, and I will be your host for today's session. I'm so excited to see all of you here today. We've prepared an insightful and practical discussion lined up, covering the Ease of Paying Taxes Act, BIR compliance, and how digital tools like SmartBooks can help you simplify your business finances. So sit back, get ready to learn, and let's make this session engaging and productive. Before we begin, here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We have a full program prepared, so please stay with us until the end for the raffle draw. To formally open our program, we are honored to introduce a remarkable leader whose vision and dedication continue to inspire us. With a bachelor's degree in business economics and a master's degree in international business and entrepreneurship from Finland, she is widely recognized for her strategic insight and impactful leadership. Please welcome the Business Operations Head of SmartBooks, Ms. May Wiso.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We're here today because of an important agenda, BIR's EOPT. But instead of viewing EOPT as just another compliance requirement, let's see this as an opportunity. For me, EOPT stands for empowerment, opportunity, practicality, and transformation. Empowerment gives MSMEs and CPAs the confidence to meet tax requirements with ease. Opportunity allows you to turn compliance into a chance to work smarter and grow faster. Practicality uses digital tools to save time, reduce errors, and simplify processes. Lastly, transformation to shift from manual work to a more digital, future-ready way of doing business. And that's the mindset that we want to inspire among business owners and accountants today. Today, you'll hear directly from our BIR representatives about the logic behind EOPT and from SmartBooks team who will demonstrate how technology can make compliance smoother, simpler, and more practical. Together, we'll see how these changes can empower not only accountants but also business owners to focus more on what matters. That is, growth and value creation. I hope today, I hope that today's sessions will answer your questions, gives you practical tools, and inspire you to embrace EOPT as a positive step forward. Thank you once again for being with us today, and we hope to reach out with you soon and share this journey with us. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. May, for setting the tone for today's session. Before we dive into today's main discussions, we'd love to hear from you first. This will help us understand your needs and challenges better, so we can connect the topics we'll cover to what really matters to you. You can scan the QR code on your screen or simply type your answers in the chat box. So here are our questions. First, what features are you looking for in an accounting system? Second, what's the biggest challenge you face in managing your business finances? Third, if you could automate one task in your accounting process, what would it be? Your answers will help us get to know you better and will serve as your raffle entry later, so make sure to participate. All right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Keep them coming, and remember, we'll be drawing raffle winners at the end of the session, so stay tuned. Let's keep the momentum going and move into the main discussion. We are honored to have our resource speaker from the Bureau of Internal Revenue who will talk about the Computerized Accounting System, or CAS, and Ease of Paying Taxes, or EOPT Act. Let us all welcome the Revenue Officer, Ms. Siti Awatif Fatima Potawan, and Revenue Officer, Ms. Nina Nicoli Vasquez.
Um, Good morning to each and everyone. Again, I'm Siti Awati Fatima M. Putawan, Revenue Officer of RDO 44 Taguig Pateros. So I'm assigned to discuss some of the salient provisions of Republic Act number 11976, or the Ease of Paying Taxes Act. More specifically, I will be discussing about some of the highlights of the amendments made by EOPT Act on Titles 4, or the VAT, and 5 for the percentage tax of the tax code, and then the implementation through amendments of pertinent provisions of Revenue Regulations number 16, 2005 as amended, or the Consolidated VAT Regulations and its transitory provisions. So we have the RR number 3, 2004 as the implementing revenue regulations for the amendments introduced by the RA 11976 as mentioned for VAT and percentage tax. Um, to begin with, the highlights of the amendments on VAT and percentage taxes, as most of us now know, is the shift from the cash basis for VAT reporting purposes to accrual basis. So, as stated, shift from cash basis to accrual basis for both sales of goods and services, including transactions to government or any of its political subdivisions, instrumentalities, or agencies in government owned or controlled corporations. So, all references to gross selling price, gross value in money, and gross receipts shall now be referred to as gross sales, regardless of whether the sale is for good or services. Because as we know before, for VAT reporting purposes, we use cash basis, and for income tax purposes, we use accrual basis. So now under EOPT, both are using accrual basis for reporting purposes. And again, we now use the term gross sales for all those in reference to gross selling price, gross value in money, and gross receipts. The second would be before we use sales invoice for sale of goods and use official receipts pertaining to our transaction for services. But now under EOPT, we use invoice for both sale of goods and services. So all references to receipts or payments, which is the basis for the recognition of sales for services under VAT and percentage tax, shall now be referred to as billing or billed, whichever is applicable. So, under the new definition of gross sales for sale of services, the issuance of invoice is when the service has already been rendered or the use or lease of properties have already been supplied by the seller, which is in compliance with the accrual reporting of sales. So previous provisions on deposits and advance payments and services to be performed had now been removed. But for long-term contracts for a period of 1 year or more, the invoice shall be issued on the month in which the service or use or lease of properties is rendered or supplied. Again, in compliance with the accrual accounting. So under the new definition of gross sales for sales of services, it institutionalized that the it is the amount earmarked for payment to third party or received as reimbursement for payment on behalf of another, which do not redound to the benefits of the seller, as provided under relevant rules, laws, and regulations, is now excluded from gross sales. So, as we know, for example, in security agencies, they receipts received by security agencies from their clients includes the salaries to be paid to the securities. So as we know, the the receipts received by the security agencies are not part of are not all part of their sales. The portion which pertains to the salaries of the um, securities are excluded from the sales of these security agencies. So under the EOPT, there is now a provision wherein, similar to sale of goods, of sales allowances and sales discounts as deduction from gross sales for sale of services. So this sales discount granted and indicated in the invoice at the time of the sale, and the grant of which is not dependent upon happening of a future event, may be excluded from the gross sales within the same quarter it was given. So this sales discount, provided it is not dependent on a this is not dependent upon a future event, can be claimed as deduction for the quarter it was given. And then for the 3 million VAT exempt threshold, under the EOPT, we are now considering the present value every 3 years using the Consumer Price Index as published by the Philippine Statistic Authority, because under EOPT, we now consider the purchasing power of peso. So every 3 years, we do adjustments to this given threshold. So it has also the effect regularly adjusting this threshold every 3 years, the percent under section 116 of the tax code as mentioned. So in the EOPT, it changed, as we have discussed earlier, it changed the recognizing the value-added tax from cash basis to an accrual basis. So in here, the taxpayer may have difficulty when it shoulders the output VAT on receivables that may not be collected. So in effect, the taxpayers are now required to remit to the BIR the portion of the output VAT despite not receiving the money for payment. So in EOPT, it introduces the output VAT credit on uncollected receivables, which is a reprieve for taxpayer who have not yet collected their receivables, otherwise already reported for VAT purposes. So in here, the output VAT credit on uncollected receivable, the seller of goods or services may now deduct the output VAT pertaining to that uncollected receivables from its output VAT on the next quarter after the lapse of the agreed upon period, provided that the seller has fully paid the VAT on that transaction, and that provided further that the VAT component of the uncollected receivables has not been claimed as allowable deductions under Section 34E of this tax code. So in case of recovery of the uncollected receivables, the output VAT pertaining thereto shall be added to the output VAT of the taxpayer during the period of recovery. So what happens here is that since we have shifted to accrual basis, despite not collecting the receivables from your client, you need to declare the output VAT for that transaction. In the instance wherein this collectible become uncollectible, you can actually deduct the output VAT pertaining to that uncollectible portion of your receivable, provided that you have declared it previously in that you have not claimed it as bad debts under Section 34E of the tax code. So here are the requisite for output VAT credit on your uncollectible receivable. So first, the sale or exchange has taken place after the effectivity of the RR3 2024, which is on April 27, 2024. Um, so your transaction must happen on or after April 27, 2024. Transactions prior to this date is not included. So the sale is on credit or on account. There is a written agreement on the period to pay the receivables. The VAT is separately shown in the invoice. The sale is specifically reported in the summary list of sales and not reported as part of various sales. The seller declared in the tax return their corresponding output VAT indicated in the invoice within the period prescribed under existing rules. The period agreed upon, whether extended or not, has lapsed. The VAT component of the uncollectible receivable was not claimed as a deduction from the gross income. So, important points here is that the date of the transaction must happen on or after April 27, 2024, and that particular transaction must be specifically listed in your summary list of sales and not under various sales. Otherwise, you cannot claim output VAT credit from that uncollected receivables, and that you have not claimed it as part of your bad debts. So, for example, we have ABC Corporation. And then ABC Corporation sold merchandise amounting to 100,000 to clients on account for a period of 90 days until September 28, 2024. So the first this uh, this output VAT credit is applicable for the transaction happened after April 27, 2024. Then, if ABC Corporation fails to collect the receivable by that date, it may claim the output VAT credit for the quarter ending December 31, 2024. So, if the receivable remains uncollected by March 31, 2025, ABC Corporation cannot claim the VAT credit again. However, if the payment is extended to December 31, 2025, the ABC Corporation may now claim the VAT credit again. If the payment extended to December 31, 2024, ABC Corporation may now claim the VAT credit in quarterly return ending March 31, 2025, provided that they did not claim such credit in the previous quarter. So simply stated, for example, in September 28, 2024, you have determined that that receivable is uncollectible. Uh, you can claim output VAT credit on the next quarter, which is on December 31, 2024. But if if the payment for such collectible was extended by the parties until the end of the year, and provided you have not claimed the output VAT credit on that transaction, you can claim the output VAT credit until March 31, 2025. So the next would be the EOPT introduced the risk-based approach to the verification and processing of VAT refund claims under Section 112C of the tax code. So we have classifications of VAT refund claims under Section 112A, the zero-rated or effectively zero-rated sales of the tax code into low, medium, and high risk. So for a low risk claim, the scope of verification requires submission of complete documentary requirements prescribed by the BIR with no verification required for sales and purchases. But for claims classified as medium or high risk, it requires the submission of complete documentary requirements and be subjected to 50% and 100% verification of sales and purchases, respectively. So, but note, however, that um, in the classification of verification from low, medium, and high risk, for instance, you have already applied for VAT refund, and then such VAT refund was denied in full. The succeeding claim for VAT refund will now be classified as high risk. Also, if for the first time you have applied for the VAT refund, such application will be classified as high risk and shall remain for such for the succeeding three VAT refund claims. And then, for instance, during the verification of your VAT refund, and that the examiner finds at least 30% disallowance of the amount claimed as VAT refund, such VAT refund will be adjusted to 100% or medium or high risk classification of VAT refund. And such shall remain the same for three consecutive filing of VAT refund claims. So the main risk factors in establishing the level of the VAT refund are as follow. Aside from we have previously mentioned, first is the amount of VAT refund claim, the frequency of filing VAT refund claims, the tax compliance history, and other risk factors that may be identified during the audit. So another highlights for the amendments on VAT and percentage tax is the um, reinstatement of the taxpayer's remedy of going directly to the Court of Tax Appeals within 30-day period in case the commissioner failed to act on the application for VAT refund within a 90-day period. Because just like in any other application, approval for a claim for a refund is not always guaranteed. So the claim may be fully or partially denied or worse, enacted upon. So in the case of a full or partial denial for the VAT refund, the taxpayer affected may within 30 days from receiving the decision denying the claim appeal the decision to the Court of Appeals. So as seen in your screen, the taxpayer claimant has the following remedies. First, in case of full or partial denial of the claim for VAT refund, it can appeal to the CTA within 30 days from receipt of the decision denying the claim. So after the lapse of 90 days, you have within 30 days from such date, you can go directly to the CTA. And then, in case the VAT refund is not acted upon within 90-day period, appeal to the CTA within 30-day period or after expiration of the 90-day period required by law to process the claim, or you can forego the judicial remedy and wait the final decision of the CIR on the application of VAT refund claim. And then the refunds shall be subject to the post-audit of the COA following the risk-based classification. So in case of disallowance of the COA, only the taxpayer shall be liable for the disallowed amount without prejudice to any administrative liability on the part of the any employee of the BIR who may be found to be grossly negligent in the grant of the refund. So again, the grant of the VAT refund is subject to the audit of COA. So the other highlights for the amendments of VAT and percentage taxes is the removal of the business style in the VAT invoice, because previously it is a common findings by the examiner for the disallowance of input tax when such invoices fail to indicate the business style of the taxpayer. Now under EOPT, it has been removed. And then In case the issued VAT invoice lacks the required information, the issuer shall be liable for non-compliance with the invoicing requirements. However, the VAT shall still be allowed to be used as input VAT credit on the part of the purchaser. Because, again, as mentioned before, very technical. As it, we are the BIR is very technical for the is very technical um, on the details to be provided in the invoice for input tax claim. So now, for so long as the information lacking is not among the listed, it can still be used as input tax for the taxpayer and only considered as non-compliance. So to proceed, for so long as the following are not the information lacking, which are the amount of sales, amount of VAT, name and TIN of both the seller and the purchaser, description of goods or nature of services, or the date of transaction are missing, it can still be claimed as input tax. So for the filing of the tax return and payment of tax, it shall now be made either electronically or manually. So to implement this, taxpayer shall file electronically in any of the available electronic platforms. So, however, in case of unavailability, the electronic platforms, manual filing of tax returns shall be allowed. And then for tax payment with corresponding due dates, the same shall be made electronically in any of those available electronic platforms or manually to any AABs and RCOs. So, provided that the system is not down, the BIR system is not down, we shall file our returns electronically using our EBIR forms or through EFPS for those EFPS filers, and shall pay the same through the accredited banks of the BIR or through RCOs, or if through EFPS, through the attached banks in your registration. So to sum up the silent provisions in the amendments made under the EOPT, as we have discussed, for again, the definition of gross sales, um, which are those um, which are those transactions which the purchasers pays or is obligated to pay. As mentioned, we are now our reporting is accrual basis now for both um, sale of goods and services. And as mentioned, the term gross sales exclude the VAT portion of that sale transaction and those amounts earmarked for payment to third party or received as reimbursement for payment on behalf of another which do not redound to the benefit of the seller as provided under relevant laws, regulations, and rules, provided that in a long-term contract for a period of 1 year or more, the invoice shall be issued on the month in which the service or use or lease of properties is rendered or supplied pursuant to accrual basis. Another highlight the um, is the allowable deductions from gross selling price, which in computing the taxable base during the quarter, the following shall be allowed as deduction from gross sales, which is yung those allowances granted by the VAT registered person during the quarter in which a refund is made or a credit memo of refund is issued. For so long as we have mentioned, such discount is not dependent on a future event. And then Um, Another is yung sale, as mentioned, sales discount, which are not dependent on the happening of a future event. These are excluded from gross sales within the same quarter it was given. So for threshold for exempt transaction, again, the 3 million threshold shall now be adjusted every 3 years. And then the present value of money using the consumer price index as published by the Philippine Statistic Authority is considered, so that the peso value of money as time passes by is considered. So hindi na siya fixed na 3 million lang. It is subject to adjustments. And then we have the, for recap, for the output VAT credit on uncollected receivable, we can use such credit out, we can claim such output VAT credit on uncollectible receivable for so long as the seller has fully paid the VAT on that transaction, and that the VAT component of that uncollectible receivable has not been claimed as allowable deduction under Section 34E of the tax code, which is the bad debts. And then these are the requisite for the entitlement of output VAT credit, as mentioned. First, the transaction must happen on or after April 27, 2024. So transactions occurring prior to such date is not among those transactions referred to this provisions. And then, of course, the sale should be on credit or on account. And then my written agreement on the period to pay the receivable, because as we have illustrated a while ago, such output VAT credit is can be claimed on the next quarter when such receivable is deemed uncollectible. And such agreement must be written kasi, for instance, there are changes as to the settlement of that payable. It can also be used as a basis um, for the period for the claim of the output VAT credit. And then the transaction must not be among the must not be among the tag as various sales in the summary list of sales. It must be explicitly specifically stated in the summary list of sales. Um, And then the VAT component of the uncollectible, as we have mentioned, is not claimed as a bad debts, because otherwise it will be redounded to double deduction on the part of the taxpayer. So another affected provisions of RR number 16 2005 as amended are the claims for refund tax credit certificate for input tax. So the cancellation of VAT registration. So a VAT registered person whose registration has been cancelled due to retirement from or cessation of business, or due to the changes in or cessation of status under Section 106C of the tax code, may within 2 years from the date of cancellation apply for the issuance of tax credit certificate or cash refund for any unused input tax which he may use in payment of his other internal revenue taxes, or apply for refund for any unused input tax. So um, 2 years from the cessation of your business, for so long as in compliance with the requirements set forth by the BIR, the taxpayer can still apply for refund for the unused input tax. So, highlight number 8 to summarize is the um, in cases of full or partial denial of the tax refund. Now, the taxpayer affected may, within 30 days from the receipt of the decision denying the claim, appeal the decision with the Court of Tax Appeals. Or in case the VAT refund is not acted upon by the commissioner within the period prescribed above, the taxpayer affected may appeal to the CTA within 30-day period after the expiration of the 90 days required by the law to process the claim, or to forgo the judicial remedy and hintayin na lang talaga yung decision ng commissioner for the application of the refund. So, under the EOPT, as we have mentioned, we are now using the risk-based approach in the verification and processing of VAT refund claims. So we have the um, medium and high risk, which is subject to 50 to 100% verification of the VAT refund claim. And then again, as we have mentioned, this VAT refund is subject to the post audit of the COA, and that the taxpayer shall be liable for the disallowed amount without prejudice to any administrative liability on the part of the employee of the BIR who may found to be grossly negligent in the grant of such refund. So, the transitory provisions, the RR number 3 2024 shall apply to sales of services that transpired after its effectivity, which is on April 27, 2024, following posting in the BIR website on April 12, 2024. And then for outstanding receivables or services on account prior to the effectivity of the RR, the corresponding output VAT shall be declared once it has been collected. And then, in case of collection, the sales and corresponding output VAT therefrom shall be declared in the quarterly VAT return when the collection was made and shall be supported with an invoice. So we just have to take note of the date, April 27, 2024 transactions are those transactions encompassing these provisions of the tax laws. So that will be all for me. Again, I am Siti Awati Fatima Patawan, and thank you.
Thank you so much, RO City Awate, for that very informative discussion. So for the second topic of that was requested from us for the EOPT Act, since it has a lot of revenue regulations encompassed into it, we will tackle about the penalties. So pursuant to Revenue Regulations number 6-2024, there. Okay. So pursuant to Revenue Regulations number 6-2024, it implements the section pertaining to number 45 pertaining to the of the reduced interest and penalty rates for the micro and small taxpayers. So this is one of the most, if not one of the most, if not the most important features of the EOPT, because it affects, or it scopes out the micro and small taxpayers. So first, category that we should discuss about this provision is that it doesn't affect all classes of taxpayers. So for EOPT, specifically RR number 8-2024, the EOPT classified our taxpayers into four uh, categories: the micro taxpayers, small taxpayers, medium taxpayers, and the large taxpayers. So for purposes of RR 6-2024, we will only it only covers the micro and small taxpayers. So which are these taxpayers? The classification of the taxpayers are based on the annual gross sales of the taxpayer. So our discussion for today will cover the two classifications, which is the micro and small. Micro taxpayers are those taxpayers whose annual gross sales for a taxable year is less than 3 million pesos. So that would be the gross sales. And then for the small taxpayers, these are the taxpayers whose gross sales for a taxable year is exactly 3 million pesos to less than 20 million pesos. So this discussion is only applicable to these two classes of taxpayers. So what are the special concessions pursuant to this revenue regulations? Number one is the reduced civil penalty rate of 10%. So this covers the following requisites. Number one is the failure to file any return and pay the tax due thereon as required on the date prescribed. Number two, the failure to pay the deficiency tax within the time prescribed for its payment in the notice of assessment. Or number three, the failure to pay the full or part of the amount tax shown on any return to be filed, or the full amount of tax due for which no return is required to be filed on or before the date prescribed for its payment. So from the original rate of 25%, it was reduced to a lower rate of 10%. And then it is important to note that these three requisites should be present for us to avail the reduced civil penalty rate of 10%. How about the 50% civil penalty rate in the following cases? 50% civil penalty rate is applied in the cases. Number one, the willful neglect to file a return within the prescribed period, or the false or fraudulent filing of return. Since it can be assumed that fraud was has taken place, 50% civil penalty rate is applicable to this case. A substantial underdeclaration of the taxable sales or income, which means or has a threshold of more than 30% of the amount declared in the return, or a substantial overstatement of deductions, which means more than 30% of the actual deductions. This constitutes prima facie evidence of false or fraudulent returns. And then the 50% civil penalty rate will be imposed in this case. Second special concession would be the reduced interest rate. So from 12%, we will reduce 50%, lowering the interest rate to 6%. So the imposition of interest on any unpaid amount of tax or any unpaid amount of tax, interest at the reduced rate of 50%, which constitutes to 6% of the interest rate mandated in Section 249 of the Tax Code. Since the rate of interest is double the effective legal interest rate for loans or forbearance of money set by the BSP, which is 6%. So normally, for all interest computations, we use the 12% rate. However, due to EOPT law, it will be reduced by 50%. The 12% will be reduced by 50%, which is also equal to the rate of BSP interest, which is 6%. So the legal interest imposable to cover taxpayers, which are the small and micro taxpayers, will only be 6%. Third special concession is the reduced penalty rate of 50% in the following cases. It is very important, again, to take note that these requisites should be present for us to avail the reduced penalty rate of 50%. Number one, failure to file an information return, statement, or list. Number two, failure to keep any record. Number three, failure to supply any information. For example, penalty is 500 pesos for each such failure because pursuant to RMO 7-2015, the said failures to file or keep any record or supply any information is tantamount to 1,000 pesos for each such failure. However, because of the EOPT and reducing the penalty rate by 50%, the penalty will be 500 instead of 1,000 for each such failure. However, the aggregate amount for all of such failures per taxpayer during a calendar year shall not exceed 12,500 pesos. Actually, the original ceiling for this is 25,000, but imposing the reduced penalty rate of 50% from 25,000, the maximum will be 12,500. That is per taxpayer. And then all inclusive of all the failures that the taxpayer was the taxpayer failed to file or keep any record for the taxable year. And then the info or record should still be required by the tax code or by the commissioner. So even though the takeaway from this is that even though we will pay the penalties for such failures, we shall still file the information or the record that was supposed to be filed in which is simultaneous with the payment of the penalty. This will the filing of such return is still required. So the reduced compromise penalty rates of 50%. In cases of criminal violations not involving the commission of fraudulent act of the following provisions. Number one, Section 113, the invoicing and accounting requirements. Number two, Section 237, the issuance of invoice. And number three, Section 238, the printing of invoice. So the policies and guidelines prescribed under RMO number 7-2015 and RMC 3-2022 and other relevant revenue issuances, rules and regulations shall remain applicable. So we should note that criminal violations are not included in the pertinent provisions of this RR since it will not be covered by this provision. So effectivity, the reduced penalty and interest rates shall take effect upon the effectivity of the EOPT law. To reiterate earlier's discussion, the effectivity is April 27, 2024, which is 15 days after the publication of such issuances in the BIR website, which took place last April 12, 2024. So all transactions on or after April 27, 2024 will be covered by this provision. It is important to note po na, for example, there are taxpayers who come to our office and then they have transactions or they want to compute penalties for their failure to file returns prior to this date. We cannot apply the reduced rates for the penalties because prospective application is required for this law. And then again, it is implemented by Revenue Regulations number 6-2024. So that will be all for the EOPT topics. We understand that the EOPT covers a lot of topics. However, due to the limited time that we were provided and that we also have, we only covered two of the regulations. So if you have any questions pertaining to other provisions, maybe Miss Donna or other representative can contact us via email, or you can also visit our office. We always have an officer of the day in our field. They are we have a duty for officer of the day, which can assist you with your queries, or via email, it will do also. So for the next topic after EOPT, we will also tackle about the computerized accounting system. So the discussion for the computerized accounting system will be pursuant to RMO number 9-2021. This regulation covers the simplified guidelines and procedures on the use of the computerized accounting system or CAS, the computerized books of accounts or CBA, and its components, which includes the electronic storage system, middleware, and other similar systems. So a quick background, pursuant to Section 232 and 235 of the NIRC or the tax code as amended by our train law, the books of accounts and other accounting records shall be preserved by the business entities and shall be subject to examination and inspection rather. So based on EOPT law, from 10 years, it was reduced to 5 years. So the taxpayer shall be able to preserve their books of accounts for a period of 5 years to be able to subject for examination and inspection. Hard copy for the manual registration and loose leaf registration of books of accounts, and soft copies for the computerized books of accounts. So initially, the regulation covering the CAS and CBA is under RMO 21-2000 amended by RMO 29-2002 for your reference. So relative thereto, this order is hereby issued to address yung issues and concerns of the taxpayers intending to use the CAS, the CBAs, or its components, including ESS, middleware, and other systems, particularly the processing of the permit to use thereof. So, pursuant to RA 11032, also known as the EOPT Act, or the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act, yung existing requirements and processes in allowing the use of these books of accounts and systems are hereby simplified, because these are the main concerns of our taxpayers. We encourage our taxpayers to use computerized accounting system and computerized books of accounts because it will be easier for both ends, the taxpayers end and the BIR's end, if you can avail the CAS or CBA. However, prior to the issuances of pertinent provisions like the ease of doing business and this RMO, the taxpayers are having a hard time applying for such CAS and CBA because there are a lot of requirements. So the objective of this RMO is to streamline the documentary requirements and simplify the process on the use of CAS, CBA, and its components. Also, it amends certain provisions and simplifies the requirements under RMO 29-2022. We will, after that, the first question is, what is the scope of implementation? So the provisions stated in this order shall be applicable for any of the following. First, let's start with the large taxpayers. If some of our audiences are part of the large taxpayers classified under RR 1-98 as amended by RR 17-2010, you are automatically mandated to maintain or to use computerized accounting system, which is pursuant to RR 9-2009. So large taxpayers are covered by the National Office of the BIR, and these are taxpayers whose gross sales are annually they have gross sales amounting to at least 1 billion pesos. So for you to be able to be classified as large taxpayers, you will be notified by the national office. So I think probably most of our audiences right today are part of the second category, which are non-large taxpayers engaged in business, but you opt to use any of the following. So it is important to note that if you are not a large taxpayers, using of CAS or CBA is only optional, but from the BIR's point of view, we encourage you to use, if you have the capacity and the opportunity to do so, we encourage you to use the CAS. So you are opted to use any of the following. Number one, computerized accounting system. Number two, pwedeng computerized books of accounts only. And then number three, the components of the CAS or CBA, which may be number one, any system of or software which generates general journal and other subsidiary books or records. Number two, any system or software that is utilized for recording sales, purchases, accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory, and payroll. Number three, any system or software which generates subsidiary ledgers. This includes voucher register, OR register, AR or AP register, or the likes, and other accounting records, which includes principal receipts or invoices, cash check vouchers, journal vouchers, and the likes. Number four, any system or software that generates reports as required by the BIR. This includes Void Report, Senior Citizens or PWD's report, and the National Athletes and Coaches Discount Summary Report, and the SLSP. Or lastly, number five, the cash register machines or CRMs, POS, point of sale systems, or any sales receipting or invoicing system or software which is connected through a network or link to CAS or CBA. So these taxpayers engage in business who shall, number three, sorry, the last scope is the taxpayers engage in business who shall use an electronic storage system, middleware, and other similar systems. Let's move on to the policies and guidelines. The registration of system. When we say system, this already includes the CAS, the CBA, and all of its components. So number one, for the registration of system, all taxpayers who intend or who opt to use the CAS, CBA, and other components shall inform and register with your RDO or large taxpayer office where you are registered. You should notify your RDO of your intention to use such system by submitting the requirements stated on Annex A. I will flash the Annex A, the latter part of the discussion. However, it is mandatory that the system to be adopted shall strictly comply with the standard functional and technical requirements set under Annex B. So all annexes stated in this discussion are all found under RMO 9-2021. So if you like to visit our BIR website, you can search for Revenue Regulations 9-2021 for the specific annexes. Number two, all documents that I have mentioned pertaining to the applications for the registration of system shall be submitted either manually or via electronic email. The sworn statement, Annex C, with the attached summary of system description, commercial invoices or receipts, Annex C-1, and the accomplished standard functional and technical requirements, Annex B, shall be submitted to the RDO where your head office is registered, except under the following circumstances. So for all cases, you shall submit all your required or mandatory requirements to the Revenue District Office where your head office is registered. However, there are exceptions. First exception, if the branch office of the taxpayer adopts the system ahead of its head office. So for example, if the head office doesn't have or doesn't register a system, but the branch office will be the first one to do so, in this case, the application for registration will be filed at the RDO where the branch office is registered. And then the certification will be issued by the RDO specified. And then the certification from the RDO where the head office is registered has yet to use the system or software. In the event that the head office will follow the branch or it shall subsequently adopt the name system, which was previously adopted or first initially adopted by the branch office and duly registered with the RDO, with the branch, the registration of the branch, the new registration documents shall be submitted by the head office to its RDO where it is registered. And a new acknowledgement certificate or AC shall be issued to the head office. So the head office and the branch will have two separate acknowledgement certificates. And then the annex of the acknowledgement certificate shall indicate all the branches that are using the said system or software. Second exception is if the branch office of the taxpayer adopts a system from other branches in its head office. So in this case, the application for registration will again be filed at the RDO where the branch office is registered, and then it will have a separate acknowledgement certificate for the branch office. So since it has a different system, it has also a different acknowledgement certificate. Number three, the concerned RDO or large taxpayer office shall issue an acknowledgement certificate upon receipt of the complete documentary requirements prescribed herein. The acknowledgement certificate shall be issued within 3 working days from the receipt of complete documentary requirements. The acknowledgement certificate shall be valid unless revoked by the Bureau upon discovery of non-compliance with the provisions of this order and other related revenue issuances during the conduct of post-evaluation. Number 4, affiliated companies, including sister companies, franchisees, closely held corporations, other similar companies related to a parent company shall register the system to be used with the RDOs or large taxpayer office where the aforesaid companies are registered. The requirement shall be applicable regardless whether these companies are sharing servers and using the exact same system previously registered. So it only means that separate entities will have separate acknowledgement certificates. This is also important whenever the BIR conducts tax mapping. We require a copy of your acknowledgement certificate. So if you have a separate PIN or taxpayer identification number, it means that you shall have a separate acknowledgement certificate regardless if you have affiliated companies or sister companies which uses the same system, because you are considered different juridical entities. Number 5, no system demonstration nor pre-evaluation shall be conducted as a condition for the registration of the system. This is one of the salient features of RMO 9-2021, because prior to the issuance of this RMO, we have pre-evaluation or pre-system demonstration of the registration of the system. This is where the taxpayers have difficulty in applying the CAS, because during the pre-evaluation, there are a lot of requirements needed. That's why, pursuant to ease of doing business, pre-evaluation was removed. So, but however, of course, although there is no pre-evaluation, still the RDO concerned may clarify certain features of the system indicated on the sworn statement. And also, we may request for an amendment of the sworn statement should there be any items that needs to be included or clarified in such sworn statement. Number 6, the taxpayers who will avail the services of tax service providers or those third-party software providers for the use of a system or software must register such system with us prior to the effectivity of their contract with the TSPs or third-party software provider. This is very important to note that the reckoning period is prior to the effectivity of your contract with the third-party software. A joint sworn statement, Annex E, with attached summary, commercial invoices, records, and report specification, Annex C-1, shall be executed by both parties. That is to say, the taxpayer and the TSP provider in such cases. So both parties must also include in that aforementioned joint sworn statement that the system has no facility that may suppress sales income and or other technical scheme that may affect the correctness of the sales for purposes of taxation. The taxpayers who will avail the services of tax service providers shall be required to keep and maintain all accounting records and other relevant financial data for a mandatory of That would be 5 years pursuant to EOPT law. So prior to EOPT RR 5-2014, it was 10 years, but now it would be 5 years. However, exception would be if it was found that there is fraud, if ever, fraudulent activities, it would be 10 years after the discovery of fraud. But generally, it would be 5 years. So all books of accounts should be present in the principal place of business and should be made available to BIR during the audit and other enforcement activities, which includes the tax mapping, as I've said a while ago, that will be conducted by the authorized revenue officer of the BIR. So in case of your termination or expiration of contract, the taxpayer who availed the services of such TSPs shall notify the RDO having jurisdiction over the place of business prior to the expiration or termination of contract. So once you terminate or the contract expires with the TSP, it shall automatically cancel also the registration of the system. It is mandatory to notify the BIR because failure to notify BIR of such changes is tantamount to penalties. Number 7, the taxpayers with application for accreditation of cash register machines, CRM's POS system, which are bundled or even if software only, and other sales receipting system or software that will be linked to a duly registered system, it shall be processed following the provisions on the accreditation and subsequent registration of the CRM POS machine and other sales receipting software based on existing revenue issuances. This is tackled with a different revenue regulations for CRM POS. So it should be noted that the registration of CRM POS machines and other software shall be different from the registration of system. So meron po tayong different revenue regulations which tackles the CRM POS application. It is different from the system. So salient details of the CRM POS machines and other software that will be linked to any system must be declared by the taxpayers in the annexes. So all machines that has a link to the CAS or CBA shall be included in the annex of the sworn statements. Example number 1, the POS server or machine details, which includes brand, model, serial number, software details, software name and version number of the machine. Number 2, the terminal details, which includes machine details. Next, number 8, the taxpayer must submit an update of registration following the provisions of filing a new application in case of major system enhancement, such as but not limited to following. So the following items that I will discuss in any case that you have a major system enhancement, you shall inform the BIR. Number 1, if there is a change in the functionalities of the system, particularly on enhancements that will have a direct effect on the financial aspect of the system that includes modified computations and other financial related issues that were considered. Number 2, if there would be additionals or removals of modules or submodules within the system, and that it will have a direct impact on the financial aspect of the system. Number 3, if there are changes in the system or software version or release number that will have enhancements on the financial aspect of the system. And lastly, all other enhancements that will be deemed as a major system enhancement based on the recommendation of the technical evaluators. So basically, if it has if such change will have a direct impact on the financial aspect of the system, it is already considered a major enhancement. However, upon the recommendation of the technical evaluators of the BIR, there will be certain other cases that will constitute to a major enhancement. In any case that you will have a major enhancement, please notify the BIR because it will have an update on your registration. So there will be a new permit to use given to you. So in case the taxpayer is found to have used an enhanced or upgraded system without informing the BIR and that it was used prior to the it was used prior to informing the BIR, the taxpayer will be subjected to applicable penalties under existing revenue issuances. It is important to note that such penalties are high and that we discourage use of enhanced systems prior to informing the BIR. Number 9, in case of any minor system enhancement, which doesn't include direct impact on the financial aspects. Example of this are the user interface modification, bug fixes if ever there is a glitch in the system, performance improvements, etc. The taxpayer must still submit a written notification to the RDO where you are registered, which states the specific minor enhancement on the system. So since only a written notification is required, no update will be provided. Next topic would be the use of receipts or invoices. So the taxpayers with duly registered system without system generated principal and or supplementary receipts or invoices should apply for authority to print such receipts based on existing revenue issuances. While on the other hand, taxpayers applying for registration of their systems that will use system-generated supplementary receipts or invoices, but with manual BIR-approved principal receipts or invoices or authority to print, shall likewise be declared in the sworn statement in its annexes. So it can be that you have a CAS or CBA but has a manual BIR-approved authority to print. That's allowable. However, it shall be declared in your sworn statement and in all of your annexes. Number 2, in case of system downtime, taxpayers with duly registered system who are using computer-generated principal and or supplementary receipts with system application that has no redundancy or automatic switchover shall be allowed to issue manual receipt and or supplementary receipts or invoices. However, this manually printed and pre-numbered principal or supplementary invoices with approved ATP reserved or set aside for use during systems downtime should not exceed 1,000 sets at a time. It should be noted that the system-generated principal or supplementary invoices must comply with the mandatory information required under Section 5 of RR 10-2015 as amended by RR 16-2018 except for the following, which are applicable only for the CRM POS machine. Number 1, the machine identification number or MIN, the serial number of the said machine, and the accreditation details of the CRM or POS supplier. Next topic would be the books of accounts. So the taxpayers, both large and non-large, shall use books of accounts depending on the business requirements. However, these BOAs or subsidiary accounting records must comply with the bookkeeping requirements and information prescribed under RR 9-2009. So soft copy of the CBAs and other recording accounting records shall be registered with the RDOs where the head office or branch is registered within 30 calendar days from the close of the taxable year. It shall be in standard audit file in compliance with BIR 16-2006 and shall be saved in a USB drive or other electronic storage device. This shall be properly labeled with the name of the taxpayer and the taxable year scoped by the books of accounts. A transmittal letter showing the detailed content of the USB drive label must be prepared and submitted by the taxpayer, and the same must be duly stamped, registered, and signed at the RDO or LT office having jurisdiction over the head office or branch office. Should the taxpayer register an unaudited books of accounts and other records, the auditor's adjustments shall be submitted in a soft copy. Further, all electronically archived information in the books of accounts and other records or documents must be retained pursuant to existing revenue issuances. So what are the procedures when a taxpayer opts or is mandated to process the application for registration of system? So number 1, you must submit the complete documentary requirements to our client support section of the RDO concerned where the taxpayer is registered. So the basic documentary requirements I will show at the latter part of the discussion. And then this will also serve as a guide in filing application. In case the documentary requirements were incomplete, the BIR shall return the said application and identify the remaining documents that are required to be complied. So since we are ISO certified also, we do not accept incomplete requirements. So um, once your application or the submitted documents are incomplete, we will return your applications together with all your submitted documents. Number two, provided that the taxpayer submits complete requirements, the taxpayer shall receive the acknowledgement certificate within 3 working days from the submission of the complete documentary requirements. It has a control number, ACCN, that will be indicated on the face of the system-generated principal or supplementary invoices. In case there are discrepancies in the information provided on your submitted documentary requirements, you shall submit a notice or letter of denial provided in Annex F that shall be received from the CSS. So what are the standard requirements? So this is provided in the Annex A of RMO 9-2021. I will briefly skim through it. Number one, sworn statement. This shall include if the system is used and maintained by the taxpayer, Annex C of RMO 9-2021, or joint sworn statement if your system is outsourced or used and maintained by tax service providers or third-party software providers instead of the taxpayer, which is under Annex E, whichever is applicable. So either of the two, if you have a tax service provider, you use Annex C, you use Annex E, but if you don't have TSPs, you use Annex C. And then on top of that, you shall also attach duly accomplished summary of system description, commercial invoice, receipts, document description, forms, records, and report specification under Annex C-1. Second requirement, you shall have a sample printout of the principal and supplementary invoice compliant with RR 16-2018 and other accountable forms that will be used if applicable. Number three, sample printout of your books of accounts, which shall be compliant with RR 9-2009. Number four, printed copy of your audit trail. This includes your activity logs generated by the system that you will use. Number five, and lastly, duly accomplished and signed Annex B, which is the standard functional and technical requirements. So there are only 5 mandatory requirements. However, there are additional requirements if applicable. For example, if you are transacting through a representative, if you are a sole proprietor, you shall issue a notarized special power of attorney executed by the taxpayer applicant indicating specific transactions. Plus, you shall have one original SPA for first-time submissions, but if you have 2 or more transactions, it can be photocopy. We will refer to your original submission. And then if the authorized person includes more than one transaction, kindly submit the certified true copy together with the original copy for presentation and validation, and then we will give it back to you. On top of that, kindly attach also any valid government-issued ID of the taxpayer and the authorized representative with specimen signatures, at least 3 specimen signatures. However, for corporations or non-individuals, instead of SPA, you shall provide board resolution or written resolution in case of one-person corporation, or secretary certificate indicating the purpose and the name of the authorized representative. Again, if it's your first time to submit, we require one original. But if these persons are authorized to more than one transaction, kindly submit at least a certified true copy, and then kindly bring the original copy for validation. Then we will give it back to you. And then also any valid government issued ID of the signatory and authorized representative with specimen signatures. And then additional requirement is the certification from the purchasing company allowing the taxpayer applicant to use the same system. So the whole discussion was under RMO 9-2021. Again, you can visit our website to have the full text or the digest of the RMO, and we will have Q&A afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miss City and Nina, our BIR speakers, for sharing those very important updates. They'll still be with us for the Q&A session later, so you can hold on to your questions or type them in the chat box anytime. And just a quick reminder, our warm-up questions is still available in the chat box, so feel free to share your answers if you haven't. Again, just a reminder, it will be your entry for our raffle later. All right, so let's now get to know SmartBooks more, what it is and how it can help businesses like yours. And to walk us through this, we have the key accounts manager of SmartBooks, Miss Lily Victoria Gregorio.
I'm Lily Victoria, the account manager of SmartBooks Philippines. SmartBooks is a cloud-based accounting and business management solution designed to make handling your finances easier and more efficient. Instead of spending hours on manual spreadsheets or struggling with outdated systems, SmartBooks let you manage everything in one secure platform. So the concept of SmartBooks began in 2005, driven by the growing demand of accounting and ERP solutions for mid-sized to large enterprises. Like big corporations, small businesses also face common challenges: manual accounting processes prone to human error, limited access to financial data, and the complexities of BIR tax compliance. They typically have three options: Excel, on-premise system, and cloud solutions. Using Excel for accounting is an improvement over manually recording transactions in journals, but it still has significant drawbacks. It remains prone to human error, lacks real-time financial data access, and does not include built-in tax computation or BIR forms. Another option is on-premise systems. Around that time, SAP B1 entered the market alongside other competing technologies. However, the high cost made these solutions inaccessible for many businesses, even at the entry level. Companies needed at least 2 to 3 million pesos to implement standard modules, not included localization and tax configuration costs. Small businesses, however, either do not have or are not yet willing to invest millions in solutions like SAP, NetSuite, and other platforms. In the Philippines alone, there are over 1 million micro and small businesses that are cost conscious but could greatly benefit from an efficient solution. Traditional on-premise systems also come with high upfront and maintenance costs, limited automation and customization, restricted remote access, and the need for manual tax updates. For micro, small, and growing businesses like yours, a cloud solution may be the best fit. It provides real-time financial insights, is cost-effective and scalable, and enables mobility while ensuring security in the cloud. And that's the value of SmartBooks. So SmartBooks is a cloud-based accounting system that integrates core function of the business into one system. SmartBooks has robust functionality that caters to your needs. What you can see on the screen are the core functionalities of SmartBooks Cloud ERP, which includes a complete set of business modules. So these modules are fully integrated to support the end-to-end operation of your business, from purchasing, financials, treasury, production, fixed asset, inventory, sales, customer and suppliers to admin function. In short, SmartBooks offer a comprehensive suite of integrated modules designed to streamline and simplify every aspect of your business operation. As a cloud based solution, security is very important to us. That's why we invest in the highly secured cloud hosting services, Amazon Web Services to provide your safe and secured access to real time data anywhere you are. SmartBooks is a local brand, and we are proud to say that because it means that we understand the local business. While we standardize the core function of the business process, we are flexible to accommodate processes and attributes unique to your business. We also have local support that gives you 24/7 access to support ticketing system. We have BIR tax compliant forms and reports to save time, and we have wide network of accountants and accounting firms in case you would need BIR related expertise. Here is an example of how SmartBooks can easily make transaction and generate BIR forms and reports.
Streamline your finances and stay compliant with SmartBooks. Today, we'll guide you through creating an accounts payable voucher and generating a BIR 2307 report with ease. Let's now generate an accounts payable voucher. Click Purchases from the navigation panel, then select AP Voucher. In the AP Voucher form, choose a supplier by clicking the search icon next to the supplier number. Use the search icon at the bottom of the table to select an item. Enter the quantity, unit price, VAT code, and withholding tax. Click Add to include the item in the Accounts Payable Voucher form. The breakdown will appear in the lower right corner. Click Save to post the transaction. Now, let's generate BIR 2307 report. Go to the menu and click on Reports. Find BIR 2307 under the drop-down of BIR. Select the supplier and date range to capture the relevant transactions and calculate withholding taxes. Click Preview, then export to PDF. The BIR 2307 report will display with the vendor's details automatically. That's it. You've successfully created an AP voucher and generated a BIR 2307 report in SmartBooks, simple and efficient. Streamline your finances and stay compliant with SmartBooks.
So that is just one of the BIR forms that we can generate. SmartBooks has the list of BIR standard reports that you can use.
Thank you so much, Miss Lily, for that insightful overview. Now, let's learn how SmartBooks specifically help businesses stay compliant with BIR requirements. To discuss this, we have the channel and key account specialist of SmartBooks. Let's hear it from Miss Arja Camano.
Hi everyone, I'm Arja, one of the key account managers here at SmartBooks. First of all, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. I know how business owners and finance team can get, so we really appreciate you being here. And today we'll talk about something that often feels complicated, stressful for many businesses, and that is BIR compliance. And I'll show you how SmartBooks make this process simpler, faster, and much more reliable. Before I dive in, let me ask, how many of you here have ever felt stressed, frustrated about filing taxes or preparing BIR reports? Just don't worry, you're not alone. And that's exactly why SmartBooks is here to take away that burden. So SmartBooks is a cloud-based accounting system, but it's much more than that. Think of it as your business partner for compliance instead of juggling spreadsheets, manual calculation, and multiple systems. SmartBooks puts everything in one place. And because it's cloud-based, You don't have to worry about installation or manual updates. All you need is an internet connection and you can access your accounting data in anytime and anywhere. So let's start with VAT. Normally, VAT computation involves going through transaction one by one, applying the right rates, then double checking everything. So mistake here can be costly. So SmartBook takes the complexity out of VAT computation. Our ERP solution automates the process, accurately calculating VAT based on your transaction. So with SmartBooks, you can have peace of mind knowing that your VAT computation are accurate and compliant with BIR requirements. This means no more sleepless nights before filing, no more manual cross-checking of receipts, just peace of mind knowing that the system has already done it for you. Now, onto withholding tax. Managing withholding tax is another area where many businesses encounter delays and errors. It can be time consuming and error prone. So SmartBook streamlines this process by automating the withholding tax computation. Our system ensures accurate calculation, minimizing the risk of manual errors and helping you meet your withholding tax obligation effortlessly. So this saves you time, reduces human error, and ensures you meet your withholding tax obligation without the stress. Next, we have is BIR report generation. So normally, preparing reports for BIR can take hours, sometimes days, but with SmartBooks, you can generate compliant reports in just few clicks. SmartBooks offers a seamless BIR report generation features, enabling you to generate the necessary report quickly and easily. Our ERP system compiles the required data, ensuring that the reports are accurate, complete, and compliant with BIR guidelines. With just few clicks, you can generate reports that satisfy BIR reporting requirements, saving you a valuable time and effort. So, yeah, here are the reports that you can generate in SmartBooks. We have BIR 2550Q, 2307, 0619E, 0619F, 1601EQ, 1601FQ. We also have a summary list of sales, summary list of purchases, alpha list of withholding tax, and BIR map. Aside of that, we take pride in sharing that SmartBook is a trusted by businesses, not just for internal purposes, but also for BIR CAS approval. Our clients have successfully used SmartBooks to meet stringent BIR CAS requirements, demonstrating the system's reliability, accuracy, and compliance. Therefore, whether you required SmartBook for internal purposes or just part of your BIR CAS approval process, our ERP system is designed to meet your needs. So to summarize everything, SmartBooks helps you to save time with automated tax computation, reduce human error and ensure compliance, generate BIR-ready reports quickly, and even support your CAS approval requirements, whether you're a small business looking for a simpler process or larger company preparing for CAS approval. SmartBook is built to meet your needs. So to wrap up, SmartBook is here to make your compliance simple, accurate, and stress-free, whether it's a VAT, withholding tax, BIR reporting, or CAS approval. We built a system that truly understands the challenges businesses face and provide solutions that work. Again, thank you for joining us, our webinar today. In just a moment, we'll show you a quick demo of how the system works in action. After that, we'll have some time for Q&A, so please feel free to drop your question in the chat. I'm Arja, your key account manager here at SmartBooks, and I look forward to helping you and your business to take the next step towards seamless BIR compliance. Thank you.
That was a very informative presentation. Thank you, Miss Arja. Now that we've seen how SmartBooks supports compliance, it's time to see the system in action. Our next speaker is a certified bookkeeper specializing in Philippine taxation with 6 years of experience as an audit associate. For our live system demo, please welcome our senior solutions architect, Miss Eunice Isabel Maliksi.
Hi everyone, I am Eunice Maliksi, your Senior Solutions Architect. So thank you for joining us today. Now I'll give you a quick demonstration of SmartBook's key features, including how it helps you stay BIR compliant and streamline your business. So let's dive in. So one of the key features we have here is the purchase module. So our purchase module, we have the purchase request, purchase order, receiving AP voucher, purchase return and debit memo, and also in the reports, we have the list and the reports that we can generate into PDF or an Excel file format. So let's try to create an example of an AP voucher. So you'll just have to first select the supplier number and the supplier or the supplier name. On the input here, you can see the record or if GL. So if it's a direct expense to GL account or if the expense or purchase is an inventory. So let's try the inventory. Let's select the item code. There you go. And we can also select here different VAT codes default in the system. We have here the input goods, input VAT for services, zero rated, exempt, and not applicable. And we have the withholding tax liability if it's yes or no. And we can also allocate the expense or the purchase into different profit center. And then save. So once saved, this transaction will now create its posted entry and will affect different reports in the system. So one of which is the summary list of purchases, which is part of VAT registered compliant. Since we have an integration with the VAT code, we'll also have here an automated encoding of transaction to your purchase book and also to your withholding tax QAP or the quarterly alpha list of payees. You can also generate a BIR form 2307 for this day of transaction. So next is our cash outflows module. So cash outflow is under the treasury module. We can have cash outflow through customer, supplier, or direct to GL account. So you just need to select if it's a payment for payables or advances, and then select your supplier. So once you select your supplier, the list of open invoices or voucher will be listed under the documents for payment tab. You can select all and pay all at once, or you can just select one of the invoices. You can also filter it by due date to check which are the voucher that needs to be paid within the selected range of due date. You can also do partial payment. You just need to check the total payment field And then you can do different mode of payment through cash, check, or bank. So for this example, we'll be doing payment through check. Click add. And then as you can see here at the footer, we'll have the amount due and the amount to be paid. And then click save. Once saved, an entry will be posted. And of course, this will affect your cash disbursement book. And this will close your voucher. Next is the cash inflow. So for the cash inflows, this is for the collection of your receivables. Once you've created an invoice using the sales module, it's actually just the same with the AP voucher. You just need to select customer and then select the inventory or the revenue account. And then you can now go to cash inflow to create a transaction for the receivable. You just need to select again the customer number to identify, and then the list of open receivables, AR, or invoices will be listed under the documents for payment. So again, you can check all if you're going to receive or collect all of the invoices at one inflow document, or you can just select one. You can also do partial collection, and you can collect through cash, check, or bank. So for this example, let's try the cash payment or cash collection. So we'll do cash on hand of 8,660.71. Just click save. Okay. And there you have it. You now have a posted entry for your cash inflow or for your collection. So this will affect your cash receipt book and will close the invoice or the accounts receivable document. Next is let's go on to some of the BIR reports that you can generate here in the system. So this is not limited to what we will be having here as an overview, but these are some of the BIR reports. So BIR reports, you can find it here under financials module. So you can see we have different reports here. We have the list, the ledger, subsidiary, balance sheet, profit and loss, and the BIR report. So let's have this BIR 2307 as an example. All right. So with just a few clicks from the selection of the supplier name, we now and the range of the date, we now have a BIR 2307. We also have here general journal. Just select the date range. You can select per profit center and then export to PDF or an Excel file format. We now also have BIR map or the monthly alpha list of payees that you can also generate here the QAP or the quarterly alpha list of pays. There, for the quarterly alpha list of pays. Alright, so here at the BIR reports, we have different reports that you can generate in PDF or Excel file format. Under financials also, is what I mentioned earlier, we have the trial balance, balance sheet, profit and loss, and here is the BIR report. We have summary alpha list of withholding taxes, summary list of purchase, summary list of sales, and some other forms that you can generate here. So let's do an example of the summary list of sales. There you go. You now have the summary list of sales. Now let's have the summary list of purchase as an example in generation of BIR reports. Okay. And an example for the summary alpha list of withholding taxes. So just a disclaimer that we're just using the date range as part of an example, but of course, you can just edit or you can do the correct date range for each quarter or for each month. All right. So these are some, but not limited to, BIR reports or reports that you can generate from the system. So if you would like to know more, we can send you the list of the reports that you can generate here from the system, or you can also schedule with our accounts manager a demonstration of the whole system to be more detailed and it can be aligned as to what you are looking for. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Miss Eunice, for that detailed demo. It's great to see how these features can really make accounting simpler for businesses. Before we proceed to the Q&A session, I'd like to once again call on Miss Lily Victoria Gregorio for an exciting announcement.
So before we officially wrap up today's presentation, I'd like to share some exciting news with all of you. So at Smart Books, we always aim to make it easier and more affordable for businesses to manage their finances. And because you joined us today, we want you to be the first to know about our special promo. So, right now, SmartBooks comes in three packages. So, the light package at 1,499 per user per month, and For service-based businesses, it covers the standard module but doesn't include inventory. So we also have the premium package at 1,999 user per month. So it adds inventory, management, and fixed assets. So this is perfect for retail and distribution companies. And lastly, for manufacturers or larger organization, we have the ERP packages at 2,499 per user per month. So which gives you the full suite, including the production module. So now, the exciting part, we are introducing new subscription plans designed around your growth journey, not just system features. So for startups, the 499 plan gives you the essential to get started, lean, simple, and affordable. So as you grow, the growing plan at 999 adds inventory and fixed assets. So it's perfect for retail and distribution companies. And for bigger organization, the enterprise plan at 1,499 includes the full ERP suite with production so you can run at full scale. But wait, there's more. So this offer is fresh from the management and it's being given only for this webinar session. So if you sign up today, you'll get the SmartBook subscription free until December 31 of 2025. So that means that you can start using SmartBooks right away and enjoy the system for the rest of the year at no cost. So, and your paid subscription will only begin next year. So please take note that this promo covers the subscription fee only. Implementation services are not included. And I hope you were able to see how smart books can truly simplify financial management and help your business save time, reduce errors, and stay compliant with PIR requirements. So if you're ready to take the next step, I encourage everyone to take advantage of our promo while it lasts. So our team will be happy to assist you with sign up and guide you through the process. So thank you so much for your time and we look forward welcoming you to our Smart Books family.
Thank you, Miss Lily, for sharing that wonderful update on our new Smartbooks pricing. It's definitely something to look forward to. For the next slide, we'd love to invite everyone to join us for a quick photo opportunity. So I'm requesting everyone, especially our speakers, to please turn on your cameras. And yeah, in the count of three. Okay. Yan, open po muna tayo ng mga camera. Alright. Ayan, I think si Miss Eunice na lang. Okay. Alright. Ready na po ba? Miss Eunice? Can you open your camera?
I'm sorry, I don't have a camera.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem, ma'am. Sige
Thank
po.
you.
No problem. Okay, in the count of three. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay. Isa pa. Isa pa. One last time. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much, speakers, for taking that photo opportunity with us. And now, we're heading on to the exciting part, our raffle draw. Remember, your participation in our warm-up questions earlier served as your entry. So let's find out who the lucky winners are. So we'll be giving away Starbucks e-vouchers to 3 lucky winners, and our marketing team will contact you with the instructions on how to claim your prize. Okay? So get ready. All right. All right, congratulations, Rishaline and Laksamana. You just won a Starbucks e-voucher. All right, don't worry, our marketing team will contact you on how to claim your prize. Okay, next. Congratulations, Ray Alfred G. Panola. Ranola, rather. Okay, we'll be contacting you on how to claim your prize. Okay, for our last lucky winner, congratulations, Arnel Rose M. Gadgetella. Yan. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer our warm-up questions earlier. All right. So, congratulations again to all our winners, and thank you for everyone who joined. On behalf of Smart Books, thank you for spending your time with us today. We hope that this webinar has given you valuable insights into the EOPT Act, BIR compliance, and how Smart Books can make accounting and tax processes easier for you. This has been Katrina Sanchez, your host, and have a great day ahead. And we look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.